Welcome back to Questions and Conversations on Leadership and Life. In part 1 of Awareness in Action, we explored the tour of the senses, a practice to enhance awareness and presence. And now, in part 2 of Awareness in Action, we'll build on that foundation with a powerful practice called Pause, Notice, Choose. And you can use it to shift it from reactivity to intentional action on the go. So let's dive into how this can transform your leadership and life.
Before we go on to the next step, and this is from our community and our teachers, and it's just a small snippet of this, but the learning is this. With all that's going on around us, all the pings, dings, and rings, and what we might have going on with our children, what's on our plate for work, whenever we perceive that the demands that are out there exceed the resources that we perceive we have available to us, that creates reactivity. Likewise, if we're a leader or coaching someone, if I'm working with Poli and she perceives that the demands that I'm asking her to do that task exceed the resources that as a leader I'm providing to her. Hey, here's the task, and here's 2 or 3 places you can go. I've already saved the links for you so you can get there faster. If she perceives the demands are greater than the resources she has available, that's a cycle of reactivity. So how do we get from that side of the equation to a cycle of creativity or inspiration? And as leaders and even to resource ourselves, we have to flip the switch so that we perceive that the resources we have available to do the task, for instance, if I was going to write an article and I kind of had three books that I knew the substance of that came from. I mean, if I have all 3 books right there, right where I need them, and I resource myself that way, that article and my creativity is going to be much higher than if I haven't gone and grabbed the books or even taken time to think, well, where did that stuff come from? Or even as a being coached by Poli, I can ask for resources. Well, what might be available for me? What might you suggest is available to help me write that article or perform that task? So linking into that to get from one side of the reactivity cycle to the creativity cycle, we have to perceive the resources available to us exceed the demands. And the resource we're sharing with you today, see here, feel had 3 pieces.
Yes.
Pause, notice, and choose. PNC, pause, notice, and choose. So when I'm in a conversation or I'm working on a project and I sense that I'm getting into a reactive state and I'm not at my best self, I'm not being creative, perhaps I'm bringing in a conversation, I'm bringing in smoke from another fire into this conversation, that'd be a good thing to be aware of. So just being able to pause and be curious. I've got these things going on in my mind as I'm trying to actively listen to Poli and really understand what she's saying. Be aware of those. Without a pause, it's difficult for us to notice. And without a notice, it's difficult for us to choose our response or the next question we need to ask or ask for verification. So the idea is pause, notice, choose. And the trigger for that should be whatever you're doing. I'm starting to feel a little more reactive than I am creative. Let's just take a pause. Maybe I'll do a quick tour of the senses, but pause, notice, what am I feeling? What am I hearing? And then choosing a response. Does that make sense to you, Poli? Is that anything you'd like
It
to add to
does.
that before we
It
go into the
does, because
question?
I believe with our practices, what we have been practicing for quite some time now, pause, notice, and choose is always present for us. I just would like to break down the word creativity for
Okay.
our listeners. Because sometimes when we think of a creativity, we think of the art of creativity, but we can expand that in terms of when we mention it's the opposite of reactivity. Creativity is going into a higher state of mind in which you can connect it to inspiration, to innovation, to doing something different, creating something different than being reactive. And then the link to getting into this higher state of mind is the PNC: pause, notice, and choose. Just to break down a little and to make it easier to understand the creativity part of it.
Well,
I
thank
like
you, Paul.
that.
I really appreciate you sharing. It's not just in the sense, because I'd probably go creativity, think artistic, and then say, wait a minute, I'm an accountant. How creative can I be? Which, depending on the topic, sometimes I am. So thank you for bringing that in, that creativity is just getting to a higher state, creating an outcome we want, or being more imaginative, being more inspirational, more innovative, which I appreciate those words that you shared with us. So thank you for
Of course.
that. And pause, notice, choose. So that leads right into the question that we're gonna,
Do you have
Polly
an
and I are gonna
example?
reflect. Go ahead, Polly.
Yeah, before the question, do you have one, something happened? Like we all go through reactivity.
Mm-hmm.
Has something happened this week in which you made use of pause, notice, and choose right on the go? Can you think of something? An example?
Can I?
Yeah, like for this week, because yeah,
Yeah,
stress is
just
right around the corner of every day.
yeah. Well, for me, it's the smoke from another fire
Mm.
tendency and overcoming that, whether it's past discussions with others, past experiences on the golf course, those types of
Hey.
things, that, wait a minute. That's smoke from another fire. So that's where I really it comes up frequently, and that's kind of my growth edge that I'm working on, is really being able to pause and say, wait a minute, I'm flooding my brain with things that story that I'm telling myself about something that happened in the past just isn't, it's not true. So that was that what you were kind of probing
Yes,
for?
yes, yes.
An
Because I
example
was
like that?
thinking of pause, notice, and choose. I remember once talking to one of my former students. He was the CEO of a company, and he would say like, if you're driving, everybody, not everybody, but we are, we find ourselves driving, and somebody just boom cuts you off. Think of the three possibilities for why the person can. Maybe somebody from the person's family is at a hospital. Maybe it is a message that has to be delivered. But just thinking of three possibilities, three again, we are thinking of number three again, you are giving yourself the pause, and then you can choose where to go. So just by giving yourself the moment of the pause, it sets you down, and we rewire the brain to think differently.
Yeah, and I like the
Home.
explore the possibilities. We don't know what's going on in someone else's world, and the story we're telling ourselves so often is that was an intentional, and it may have just been they've got other stuff going on, and yeah, it wasn't the best move in the world, but they didn't hit you, and you were able to react to it. So thank you for sharing that. And I
Yeah.
think that leads into our question. That really is our question. I'll just frame it a little differently, maybe, is uh, what we're inviting you into is think of a past event where you would have benefited had you paused, noticed, and choose in that moment, and how, had you taken the time to do that, might you have had a different response? And I would guess that many of us has replayed things in our mind, and that we do oftentimes say, I wish I'd have handled that differently. But think of that situation, think of the pause, notice, and choose, and how that would have made that different. Likewise, in the 4 minutes or so we're going to give you to reflect, you could also be reflecting on in the next 5 days, do I have a situation, whether with my family, work, my hobby, where I would really benefit from being aware of the need to pause, notice, and choose in that situation, and maybe rehearse some ways you might do that. See yourself pause, noticing, choosing. So that's our question.
We
And
are giving
Polly,
two questions.
yeah,
Just
go ahead.
to make it clear, we are giving two questions. One question, we are reflecting back on when we would have benefited if we used, like, oh, I could have used pause, notice, and choose. And remember, we are human beings. This happens every often, and we forget that we have tools. So you are thinking of that moment you would have benefited from using it. But we grow from mistakes because they are mistakes, as Matt Abrahams usually say in his podcast. We can take it again. So then we are going to the future, a situation with family, work, meetings, in that we know it's gonna be crucial for us to really make use of pause, notice, and choose. That's right.
Yes, yes.
It has to go to.
And it's not, the assignment is you can explore both of those, one of those, um, either one. So a couple ways to look at it, and one might jump out at you quicker than the other, but for some of us, we will have time to think about both. Others of us, we might really be benefiting from spending a little more time on a past experience, how we might have handled it differently. So yes, it's two choices. You have two
Mm-hmm.
choices
Oh,
in
that's
this
good.
question. And
That's
so
good.
that's where we're going to go. But thank you for asking for the clarification.
I appreciate that. Are you ready to go
I
into some
am
thinking?
I am ready.
If you had time to capture the first moment that come to mind.
Yes, I have some thoughts I can share when we're ready for that. Were you inviting me to share?
I am inviting you to share. I can go next.
Okay, very good. So the one that came up for me is I have the last 8 to 10 years, I have 43 years embedded inside of public accounting firms. And the last 8 to 10 years, I've really worked hard on being a better version of myself. And so I'm taking you back to a habit that I had. Uh, so I read all this stuff on how to control interruptions, and people would step into my office and they would say, "How are you today? What's going on?" Just to make conversation and to connect. Everyone communicates, few connect. And so in my wisdom, I'd pull out one of my interruption stoppers, and the one I usually use was, "How might I help you?" And I didn't realize, well, that may have controlled the interruption, how damaging that was to building connections with the people I was working with. Because they were curious. They wanted to know, how was your weekend? What was going on? And if my door was open, they had no idea what I was in. So that was just a terrible question to be asking. And it really took me a while. And finally, someone pointed that out to me because I had damaged relationships. I'm not I'm not even going to try to connect with that guy anymore. And so that's just an example. If I'd have stayed curious longer, so I can just take that to the future, what finally got me out of that is I said, Steve, you've got to stay curious longer. You've got to be curious about what they want to share. So ask two questions before you respond. But that was kind of a painful time to realize all the damage I had done by my desire to use these controlling interruption techniques. While they may have controlled the interruption, they certainly did not help me connect with my staff and my coworkers. So that's a very painful example from the past. But had I had the awareness of that sooner, I would have been a lot less work repairing ththose relationships, which I was eventually able to do.
Hmm.
So that's my example. Is that
I like that.
helpful?
Yeah, it is because it's quite a learning. And as I said right in the beginning, we learn from our mistakes,
Hmm.
and we can do that, redo them when we bring it to awareness and when we see that or when we understand we have the chance to do it over, even if the situation is not exactly the same, but learning from it. And then nowadays you're seeking connections instead of interruptions to I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
That's quite a great growing. That's neat. That's neat.
Yeah, how about
When I
for
think
you?
of
What came up for you as you reflected on pause, notice, choose from either the past or coming up in the future?
I went back in past also some probably 15 years ago, almost 13 years ago. I was visiting my parents, and I ordered pizza. My dad wanted to pay for the pizza, and I was like, I ordered, I'm going to pay for the pizza. And I was just like, um, we both actually started having a discussion on who was going to pay for the pizza. And when the pizza guy came, actually, we got the pizza, the delivery. Nobody ate the pizza because we were just like, it's so high. The discussion was really, really heat up, and nobody had the pizza. I was like looking back, and like, why? What's the purpose? Just be open to somebody doing that and taking, just accept it. I like as a daughter, I could have stepped down and yes, thank you so much, Dad, for you to pay for the pizza.
So I'm curious if
It
you
was
recall, it seems like there was a missed message there. What was going on with you that made you feel so strongly that you should be paying for the pizza? I'm just curious what emotion that might have been.
it. I really don't like go thinking. I remember the situation of us fussing about it. I'm paying. No, you were paying. And and we really, no, we really got into a quite a heat up moment. What was in the moment the why I wanted to pay for it? Probably because I'm all independent. I don't need you to pay for the
Okay.
pizza. So probably something like that.
Okay.
But at the same time, it's I am at their place.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Just take it. No
Yeah.
need to fuss about it. If somebody wants to take the lead, do it with grace.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. That just comes up. That scene repeats itself all in my life, my daughter's lives, so many times. we don't give that space. We don't stay curious long enough. And thank you for sharing that example.
Yeah. Now, whenever he says I'm paying, I'm like, thank you. I appreciate it.
Very
And I really
good.
do. I really do. Because then we are taking our playing our real roles of a father and daughter for some terms, but we can have discussions that makes us grow, not that we are fussing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm hopeful and quite confident that you and your father and your family have enjoyed pizza together since then on many occasions. Or don't you? Or is pizza off the menu list now? We don't
We
even
all,
order pizza anymore.
yeah, when we are together, we kind of do not go on the pizza thing. And my
So
mom is the
you've
one who
eliminated an entire food group because of that experience. Well, thank you for sharing that.
we try different things.
And there's the smoke from another fire once again. Well, Polly,
It's really
how
fun.
should we land this plane? This has been a delightful conversation. Hopefully, the things we've covered are the see, hear, feel to help create our awareness, the demand greater than resources versus resources greater than demands, and how the one creates a fight or flight reactivity, and the other creates innovation, inspiration, creativity. And then just the idea that by doing the see, hear, feel, it puts us in a stronger place to actually be able to pause, notice, and
And
choose.
yeah, I take it all. And whenever we have a chance to do something again, if we have this in our minds, awareness that we can really pause and we have options, go for it. Don't be that impulsive. Impulsive is needed. If the house is on fire, yes, get out of the house. But for other things, mainly dealing with one another, with other human beings, we are all growing. So give yourself the chance and give the other a chance to grow too with a
Great.
pause,
Great.
notice,
Well,
and
maybe we'll
choose.
just wrap it up with what you just said, prompted that we are human beings, not human doings. And so my
Exactly.
example that I brought forward, I was a human doing at the expense of being a human being to others. So we're human beings, not human doings. With that thought, it's been delightful to share time with you and our audience today. We look forward to seeing some of your reflections or thoughts in the comments. And thank you for watching. And
Or
until next
listening.
time, this has been on Leadership and Life, questions and conversations on leadership with life. And I'm Steve.
And I'm Polly. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you,
Okay,
Steve.
make it a great day, Polly, and our listeners. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us for part 2 of Awareness in Action. We hope the pause, notice, choose has inspired you to approach challenges with greater intention and creativity. If you found this episode valuable, give it a like and share with someone who could benefit from it. And let us know your reflections in the comments. We can't wait to hear how you are using these tools in your journey. Make it a great day and see you next time.